So, Fereshteh, let me begin with you. As I understand, you foster computer coding among girls in Afghanistan. That is a newspaper headline I have never seen, nor could I ever imagine. So what are you doing, and how are you managing to make this happen?
Sure. So there are a lot of challenges and difficulties for women, especially in Afghanistan, in technology. For myself, that I have a background in computer science and I was teaching in a computer science faculty, I face a lot of challenges. There are a lot of risks and challenges for women. For example, living in Afghanistan as a traditional, very high cultural limitations for women, a lot of families are very conservative about women's education and job employment.
Is conservative code for not giving them education and not giving them employment?
Both of them.
Yes, okay.
So yeah, in a lot of places, they prevent women to go to school, and it's very difficult to find job opportunities as a woman. Why? Because safety security is a very main concern in Afghanistan. It really eliminates you to travel in a country. If you find a job opportunity in Afghanistan, most of the time your family won't let you go to another city because you can't travel alone by yourself, or you have to have a male companion. So all these challenges made me to think about establishing Code to Inspire. And why Code to Inspire? Because I think technology and education are the best way for women empowerment and helping them to step into the new world. So as an example, with Code to Inspire, they don't need to think about, my family won't let me to travel outside of the city, or what should I do if I can't get that job which is not in my city. The only thing is that they come online, they know how to code and program in a very safe and secure place, and they can get paid online.
So they do it from home?
Yeah, they can do from home.
Or wherever the local computer is?
Yes, but we are establishing the first coding school for girls in Afghanistan in Herat. And hopefully, I think in 1 month, we are having our first group of students from high school to computer science faculty. So we are focusing on the age of 15 to 25 years old girls.
So that's the right age for any of this.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
On that. When I think of this, it's not just good for Afghanistan, it's a good model for the rest of the world. If half of the intellectual capital of the world is found in the minds of women, and women are otherwise disenfranchised from this activity, the world can only be a better place if we have more brains brought to this challenge. So I guess you already agree with that.
Yes, absolutely.
And Sangeeta, yeah, you're up at MIT?
Indeed.
And you're like growing human organs. On the face of it, that sounds a little creepy. That's what Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein did. But I presume you have... You're not an evil scientist, you're a good scientist.
We try.
Yeah, you try. So what kind of things do you do up there?
Sure. So we are trying to leverage engineering tools that have been developed for making computer chips, things like microfabrication, and more recently things like 3D printing and nanotechnology for building our artificial organs. And some years ago, we realized that we could use these tools not just to build big organs, big, not creepy organs, like livers for patients that had liver disease, but we could also make teeny tiny livers and use them for improving malaria medicine, because malaria actually infects the liver on the way to the blood.
Mm-hmm. So this is an important piece of what you just described is you're not just in a lab saying to yourself, I want to regenerate a liver, let me start from scratch. You are combing the world's technologies, trying to see what you can plug together to make those advances. And so it seems to me that's not something you can do just from your MIT lab. You need like a network of people, you need journals where this is communicated. So what is the mechanism by which you accomplish this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is something that we've started calling convergence, which is the convergence of different disciplines in engineering and physics and biology and medicine. And so indeed, you need people talking to each other, you need collaborators, you need academic institutions to work differently than they did historically. You need to be able to hire somebody.
I found that money usually makes that happen.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely true.
No, it happened. I mean, in my field, we had the field of biology and we had the field of astrophysics, and we realized if we're looking for life in the universe, at some point, we have to have a shotgun marriage of these two fields. And this was enabled by funding umbrellas, where people came to that umbrella. And then we found ourselves greeting each other in the same funding stream.
Yeah.
And then we ended up inventing what is basically an entire new field called astrobiology. You start stapling together the different fields. And so
you need talent and money, I would say. Those are the two things you need.
okay, you also need the talent.
Yes.
Yeah. Not
Well, it sounds like you had the talent in that example. But
it's talent looking for a way to cross-pollinate in ways it had not previously imagined. So so no one can deny the value of this, not only as a frontier of exploration, but clearly there's a financial reward for that. So people are going to want these body parts. And so, from your bio, I read that you're also heavily engaged in spreading the love of science to girls and women in the world. In what way are you doing that?
So just as you were saying earlier, they're not half the world's brain power is available for engineering and science. And here in the US, we have about 12% of the engineering workforce is women. In the UK, it's about 6%. So we're leaving a lot of talent on the table.
So I didn't know we were doing that well compared with other countries, even at 12%.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are other countries that are doing better. India, surprisingly, has 34% women, so there's a cultural
In the engineering
piece in
fields,
engineering.
okay.
And what we see is that they start to drop out at age 11, a little bit sooner than they get to you. And it's very interesting. It's hard to get women to pick a field, right? They're not dropping out because they can't achieve. They're dropping out because they are choosing something else. So we work very hard to try and inspire these girls, to give them role models, to give them hands-on experiences. Just having all three of us up on stage, I think, is really great role model for them.
One of the great challenges is, as a scientist, you walk in front of a class of 8th graders, and is what you tell them something that's going to excite them? And it seems to me, if you walk in there saying, who wants to regrow liver tissue? That's kind of, I think you're going to get some people signing up for that, because it just sounds so cool.
I think it sounds great.
And so, let me ask you, in Afghanistan, you speak of a challenge that is there because there's a cultural force operating against you, but there's also, like, war. I mean, there are forces beyond just what is the historical culture. There is what's going on in the daily news of political forces. So how do you navigate that?
Yes, definitely. If we forget about all the traditional and cultural issues that we face in Afghanistan, there are certain places in Afghanistan, especially in South and East, that they have pretty difficulties in case of facing the Taliban. But I think I remember when I give you a very small story about my life. And I was born in Iran as a refugee, and my parents migrated to Iran. So
A refugee from Afghanistan?
Yes. And 1 year after the Taliban regime collapsed in Afghanistan, we moved to Afghanistan. So I remember that the road that we were taking from Iran border to my city, Herat, it took 5 hours or 6 hours for us to get to the city. And it was very bumpy, and we got to the city when it was getting dark. I had totally different imaginations of Afghanistan, but that day I saw that, like, very old lanterns, they hung out of these stores, and you could barely see light bulbs and electricity. We didn't have healthy water at home. We had a well at home. We had to put the water in the storage space. But then after 10 years or a decade in Afghanistan that I got my bachelor, and then I got my master, and I work.
Those degrees were in what? What subject?
In computer science.
Obviously.
Yes,
Okay.
in computer science, and I started teaching in computer science field. But that road now, it takes 2 hours to go to the city. A lot of shops, they have a very shiny light bulbs outside, and houses, they have healthy water. So what I want to tell is that yes, we do have a lot of conflicts in different areas, but it doesn't mean that we have to stop the life. Every day, a lot of people are getting killed with bombing blasts in different cities I also experienced and I saw a lot of this stuff, but it doesn't stop the life. A lot of girls, there are a lot of people who are against education. In my city, we saw the cases that they pour acid on the face of the female students, and you feel threatened because you want to promote women's activity. But the other day you go stronger because you believe that if you don't want to push this, nobody can do that for you. So yes, there are challenges, but I'm hopeful. I think that the young generation in Afghanistan, they're really into building the countries and bringing peace in Afghanistan.
Yeah. Here in America, when we speak of challenges, we think of getting stuck in traffic, and there you're describing, acid in the face and laws and other. So it's hard for so many of us in the fully developed world to feel what those challenges actually are, and it makes Sangeeta's work look really easy here, doing up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Okay. Troops aren't marching through there, are they? Let me ask you, Sangeeta, where does your funding come from?
So our funding, we've had to diversify over time. It used to come mostly from the US government, and now the model is changing. So we have to go after foundations. We have personal philanthropy.
But at some point, it jumps
industry.
species, and corporations want to use it, and then they sell it to hospitals.
Yeah.
So when does that happen, or does it never happen?
So there's actually a gap in our funding model at the moment. So,
that's the problem.
It used to be that pharma you would publish a paper, and then pharma would make a drug out of it. And now what happens is that the things that we invent are a little too early for big companies to take on. And so what we're finding is we actually have to start our own companies and grow them up a little bit before they
Something
can be
you've done
acquired.
already.
Indeed.
How many companies have you?
So my students and I have started 10 companies.
10 companies.
Indeed.
Okay, so these are companies that are actually filling that gap, that because you have the confidence and you know what it takes, and you might even be running at a loss in anticipation of it hitting very big shortly thereafterwards.
Yes, absolutely. In biotech, we always run at a loss in the beginning before we get to the clinic, because it takes a long time to make something safe and effective for people.
Right. So Fereshteh, what's your funding model? I guess it's on a kind of lower budget than high-profile lab work here, but how does it work in practice?
Sure. So we just did a very successful fundraising. We raised $20,000 through an online crowdfunding, which with this $20,000 we could establish our first coding school in Afghanistan. We do have mentors in Afghanistan, graduated from computer science faculty, girls and boys, which they are teaching the other students how they can program. But definitely, I think one of the very biggest challenges for every non-for-profit is fundraising. So whenever you get the fund, you can run the project. So that's why we thought about later on, we create our center as an incubator. So what we want to do is we try to host all that students that we try to teach them the recent technologies of programming and coding. And once they graduate, they can come and use our space as a working space, and they can take projects, and they can participate in helping the foundation as well.
So I have a question there. When I think of coding, I've done some programming in my life, as do many of my colleagues. That's what we have to do. If you're researching on the frontier, there generally isn't off-the-shelf software because they've never thought to write that before. So when I think of coding overseas for needs I might have, it could be I'm building this huge, massive code, and there are pieces of it that I can farm out. So I need the code to have this input and have that kind of output, and let me just send that somewhere else to do it, to create a kind of a black box code. Is that the kind of coding that's happening here? Or are people sort of inventing their own video games and their own apps and posting them on iTunes?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of our main mission is to really find job employment and opportunities for women online, so that they can get paid online. So we really want to eliminate the traveling safety security reason by that space. So there's two ways. One is that we really want to outsource projects to Afghanistan for women, so they can take part, and not only they get experience, but also they can understand how they can work with other people outside of Afghanistan, but working online. So it's a very valuable experience for them. But beside that, we try to develop mobile applications. Why mobile applications? Afghanistan population is 30 million. 85% of people in Afghanistan, they access mobile. So I think that's a very good market to reach out people. And forget about technology, that we teach the women how they code with recent technologies and develop mobile application. One of our main important mission is that, for example, because mainly the customers are men, and we have, unfortunately, this social issue that a lot of people, they don't trust on women's ability. So I had experience that I was going and talking to men, hey, I can design your website or develop a system. They were like, women, we don't think that you can do that. That was really a hard time for us to convince them, there's no difference. So I think that once we teach the women that they can develop mobile application, whatever it is that, it doesn't necessarily should be something serious. It can be educational, entertainment. And if you, as a man in Afghanistan, download that app, which is in Dari and Pashto local languages, and you use that, it's an empowerment itself, because they see the app in their phone that the women develop. So we try to spread that message through developing mobile applications and show the people that it doesn't matter if you are a man or a woman. It's more about how you provide facility for women.
You know what I've found socioculturally is that you do it, and you don't even tell them that they're women until everyone is completely embedded in the software, and then you reveal one day, every one of these programs you've been dependent on are written by this battery of women right here. Then they're forced to confront their biases all at once. I think if you leak it out, they might not. There's too much latitude for them to say no. But you want to hit them. I don't mean get violent on this, but that can be quite a potent punch. On that. Have you found some resistance to your leadership in these roles?
I was going to say there's something actually very similar in entrepreneurship in high tech. So you'll probably know that only 3% of high-tech startups are started by women.
I didn't know it was that low.
Yeah, and
I knew it was single digits, 3%.
Only 4% of venture capital goes to women-led companies. And actually, in many cases, it's the same kind of unconscious or conscious discrimination that underlies a lot of that. And so our approach is to keep going, to get experience, to mentor the women, to have more of them on our boards, so that when they get ready to start their own companies, that they know how it works.
10 companies. So is each company a different organ? You're going to run out of organ. How many organs does a human body have? I don't know.
Well, it has 282 cell types.
Cell types, that's where it matters here, right.
So, but we do work on the skin, we work on the liver, we work on cancer, we work on the eye, lots of different. It turns out that nanotechnology, tiny little nanosensors, can go into any part of your body. So they're very useful.
Do you have a brain center where you can rebuild some people's brains? Is that?
We do have a project.
You don't have to tell me if you're doing it, and you don't want to. You don't have to tell me.
The secret? No. We do have a project on traumatic brain injury. So there are all kinds of things to do. It's a very exciting time at the convergence of engineering and medicine. There's so much happening.
Could there be? How visible is what you're doing in other regions where women still are sort of intellectually disenfranchised? In other words, is what you're doing, can it serve as a model? I assume it can. What are you doing to make that happen?
Yeah, I think we are going to be the first coding school for the female in Afghanistan and the women. So we start from Herat, which is in west of Afghanistan. So we really try to expand our project in entire Afghanistan, but we start with the cities that they have the potential for the project, because the electricity and internet connection is really important for us. So we are targeting the places that they have the potential, but also because
You can't have internet without electricity. I think that's
yes.
we need that. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that definitely because we are trying to target a niche group of people and women, so we try to work mainly with the high school and computer science graduated students or students who are currently studying computer science. But I think my vision, my long-term vision is that we can implement these projects in Middle East as well, because there are a lot of countries in Afghanistan neighborhoods that they have the same situation for women.
Similar challenges. Something you hinted at, but I want to make it a formal question. So you have a culture that resists this level of enfranchisement of women and girls, yet therefore you are going against a culture. Is that culture so embedded that even the girls are not thinking that this is something they should do?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because when I was teaching as a teacher in university, I had in one of my class like 120, 130 people to teach, and just maybe like a single digit of them, they were women. And unfortunately, the issue that I was always noticed is that they are not raising their hands to ask a question. And why? Because first, they don't want to be embarrassed in front of the other colleagues, which mainly they are men. So what they do, they come after the class and they ask me. And I was always like, you should ask the question in the class, because if you don't ask the question, you can't follow the lesson. And that would be difficult for you. So that's why with Code to Inspire, that center and the coding school that we are making, it's not only about let's teach them how to code and be a technical person. It's also about teaching them how you have to increase your self-esteem, how you can like present your idea, how you have to be more outspoken. That's why this center is only for women, because it's the only place that they feel relaxed, comfortable, they can communicate, they can enjoy, they can raise their question, ask any question they want, be innovative. So I think that we have to provide a place for them to help them to grow their self-esteem as well, because it's not only about technical, it's also about your social activities and also your social behavior.
And everything you described there, we've heard that played many times here stateside, where the girls in middle school and high school, they're sort of shyer in the presentation of themselves to those who will stand between them and where they might advance next in their academic path. We've got to wrap this up. Do you have any just sort of concluding reflections that you'd like to share with us, Sangeeta?
Well, I'd like to just say on this diversity issue that I think there's some really exciting, promising examples of advances that have been recently made. Harvey Mudd College is a great example. They, over the last 5 years, made 3 changes to the curriculum and increased the number of women in computer science from 12% to 40%.
Wow.
So there really are best practices that I think we can start to disseminate.
Well, I first thank CGI for giving me this opportunity to spread what we are doing in Afghanistan. But I just want to see you some good numbers about Afghanistan, because I'm saying that people always see negative and not good news in social media. And during the Taliban, only 900,000 students, mainly they were men, but right now we have 10.5 million students, which 42% are women, so around 4.4 million women, the students. We do have 4 ministers, female ministers. We have 2 female governors, and women are really active in military, in governments, and in education. The only thing I want to say that I really want that the international community really help on focusing on women's education, because I think that if you have educated and literate mother, they can train the next generation more willing towards getting more education. So in this case, they are more willing for peace and not war.
So the transition has begun.